Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Camp 4. I will explain it throughout the show. It should make sense. I'm coming on a little early because maybe I want to get done a little early too. We'll see how this all works out. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm still left just to apologize for not having a more regular schedule right now. But if we are going to complete the writing of the first book at least, I'm going to need some time during the day to work on that book. And that kind of then precludes me keeping the same high standard of production here. This is a live show produced by one person in one room. And so it does take a little preparation in terms of slides, in terms of having something to say, because this is not a podcast. This is definitely not a podcast. This song that I'm starting out with is called UFO Tofu, and like its title, it is musically constructed as a palindrome, meaning that the song is the same going forward as it is backwards. See if you can hear it. This is Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, some of America's best music. Hello, hello. CQ. This is W3JJW coming to you live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining me. did actually get the title of that song wrong. I said that it was UFO Tofu. UFO Tofu is a song on the album UFO Tofu, but that was Nemo's Dream. And I'm actually really happy that I accidentally played that one. The piano player and harmonica player is the same guy in Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. His name is Howard Levy. It's hard to find his music on Spotify because he guards it well. But his talent is virtually limitless. He comes from Skokie, Illinois. I actually gave him a ride home one time with my parents' minivan that had no seats in the back of it because I had driven it from Wisconsin to Chicago to help myself move, and I left the seats in Wisconsin. So my friend Nathan sat in the back on the floor, and held on to Howard Levy's little tiny amp, and Howard Levy sat in the front seat, and I drove him back to Skokie from the Green Mill in Chicago. And I wouldn't remember what year that was, but it would have been like 93 or I don't know, 98 or something like that. I don't know. And it's still a story that if my friend Nathan were alive, we would still tell that story over and over again. And so, although Nate's not here anymore, I will probably tell that story for the rest of my life. I miss Nathan a lot. Thank you very much for joining me. Very happy to be here. It takes a lot of work for me to work up the courage and the guts to come on live anymore because it just feels so dire right now. And I don't want to be dramatic. I want to be very honest. That's all I really got for you is honesty. I don't know what really to say at this point, other than I hope that this show strikes a chord with everybody that catches it. This is live testing 1 2 test 1 2. You can see it's live, ladies and gentlemen. It's live. I'll be back in a minute. Unfortunately, I think, Carrie, your name should probably be on that special list as well. Fearla just suggested that as an extra idea there for the people that aren't necessarily subscribed to the Camp 4 broadcast, but are supporters via, direct sending of funds. And so Carrie is one of those people who is also a subscriber, I believe, but she's also sent things and stuff. And so we've got a few people that give our family hope, that's for sure. But yeah, the way that the finances of the last couple years have run out and gone negative it just requires me to say it. We need more help. And so Camp 4 is a lonely place. And I hope after this broadcast you will understand a little bit more about what I mean with that. It is not to say I know the truth. It is to say that we've got to come up with a way to move forward. I think I've finally got it. I just need enough time. I just need enough time to write it. I think I can have it done by August when we have the live event in Pittsburgh. So I hope this reaches as many people as possible. 93, brought to you by 93. That is correct. This is W3JJW coming to you live on the internet. I'm not live on the HF frequencies right now. I decided not to go there. Sometimes I am broadcasting simultaneously. It just depends on the mood and whether I remember to turn everything on. This is not a podcast. We do have a message here. We make progress in our understanding. That message is there in the bottom right. RNA cannot pandemic. Intramuscular injections are dumb. Transfection is a crime. Population pyramids are real and podcasters are not. Thank you very much for joining me once again. I will play this because I do think it's a really important message. If you haven't seen me before, this is the vibe we're trying to set here. Even though oftentimes the frustration and doubt and uncertainty that I feel all alone here, it sometimes outshines this message, but I hope I hope this is the message I can convey today. I like that vibe a lot. This is Gigaohm Biological. It's a high-resistance, low-noise information brief brought to you by a biologist. I'm coming to you live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the back of my garage. Sometimes I'm on a stool. Sometimes I'm standing up. Today I'm in my big back chair. It has been a long few days trying to really organize things in a way that we can move forward, and I feel more momentum than we've had in quite some time. I don't really like that. That's supposed to be like this. Sorry, I'm going to run that same slider again. That's better. This is the 12th of February broadcast. I'm coming to you live again from the United States of America in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, home of that guy right there, Fred Rogers, a good guy in American TV history and a shining example of the vibe that I would love to be able to project out onto the internet. However, because of my involvement with many of the people on this screen over here, I apologize. I'm not a weatherman for a living. I haven't been able to project that vibe as much as I would like to, and I certainly haven't been able to start to teach the biology that I think I'm almost prepared to teach. But that's a separate issue. I want to be sure that everybody is very clear about why it is that I haven't started Biology 101 yet, or why am I still working on this story? I'm still working on this story because this is the story that changed my life. This is the most important story in American history as far as my lifetime is concerned. If I'm going to focus on anything in my lifetime, it is my 3-year brush with this elaborate theater, at the center of which is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think an unwitting victim of this theater, but that's neither here nor there. My family is a very well, we understand very well how we have been a part of this, how we have been used or attempted to be used, and why the Wuhan cover-up book printed and published by Skyhorse Publishing is a damning document for many of the people that are on this screen. I don't know why it's so hard for me to point to that. This screen over here. It's really important for people to understand that very rarely has there been such a crack in the matrix as this book and my role in it. And I don't want this position. I just want people to understand what it means. It means that you can actually take the shackles of social media off and not be afraid of what you're leaving behind. It means that you can seek to build your own social media and encourage your children to do the same. You don't need to worry about what you're leaving behind, because what you're leaving behind is weaponized piles of money coordinating the publishing of books and the funding of actors on the internet to essentially overwhelm us. And their end goal is for us to teach this bullshit to our children, and I won't have it. That's why I think this is not yet time to move on. And instead, in the background, I'm trying to write this stuff down. I'm trying to create a couple examples of how this could be taught to people, and then I'm going to see what happens after that. And in the meantime, I think it's very important to report this play-by-play, because these people are still in the highest offices of the executive branch. They still have, for some reason or another, at least we're all led to believe, that they actually have their hands on the steering wheel. And so it's pretty important to remind everybody of that, and pretty important to keep putting this out there when no one else is. Everybody else in the car is agreeing to let Robert F. Kennedy and Jay Bhattacharya and Marty McCary drive, or that they are driving, and that is preposterous. In one way or another, that is not in the best interest of our grandchildren. I can assure you of that, because of all the experience I have with these people. So there's this video going around of this guy, and I forget his name, but I think it's in the video when I play it again. I'm going to play this video twice today, because I really think it's helped me. It's helped me to better be able to convey what's going on here. And most importantly, because I think he, wittingly or unwittingly, is scripted to pretend as though he is conveying what's going on here. The same way that Candace Owens is conveyed to be pretending to be conveying what's going on here. And the same way that Tucker Carlson does that Steve Bannon does it. And this is a magic trick. It's a magic trick, especially because most people who don't watch this show don't understand that it's done in a highly coordinated fashion. And so let's listen to this guy again. I'll try not to interrupt him. I do have text which will come up, but I might just put the text up there and not stop it and just let him go. So let me switch over to this here, and maybe I'll make myself smaller, and then we will listen to this video again.
My 3 camps of awareness framework, for anyone who's not familiar with it, goes as follows. Camp 1 is the mainstream camp. It's for those who believe essentially everything that their politicians and their television and their radio tells them. They believe in the official narratives, and they've never really learned to think critically, question, or get beyond those dominant narratives. Camp 2 is for people who have learned to ask questions and who do have their doubts about some of the main things that we're being told, be it what happened on 9/11, the origins of the financial crisis, the true nature of the alleged pandemic, etc. And there are those who realize essentially that they have been lied to by the authorities. They are asking critical questions of their own. It's quite a difficult process to go through, not just intellectually, but emotionally, to understand and to recognize that actually many of the key ideas that you've been raised to believe are, in fact, the products of propaganda.
Now, it's important for me. I'm listening to this again for the umpteenth time, and every time I listen to it, it starts to really, the whole thing breaks down, and it's beautiful. He just said that the ideas that you have grown up to understand are not correct. So sometimes he says it really well. I think it's worth, just for instructional purposes, to go back and let me start this again. We didn't go far into it.
And for those, my 3 camps of awareness framework, for anyone who's not familiar with it, goes as follows. Camp 1 is the mainstream camp. It's for those who believe essentially everything that their politicians and their television and their radio tells them. They believe in the official narratives, and they've never really learned to think critically, question, or get beyond those dominant narratives. Camp 2 is for people who have learned to ask questions and who do have their doubts about some of the main things that we're being told, be it what happened on 9/11, the origins of the financial crisis, the true nature of the alleged pandemic, etc. And there are those who realize essentially that they have been lied to by the authorities. They are asking critical questions of their own. It's quite a difficult process to go through, not just intellectually, but emotionally, to understand and to recognize that actually many of the key ideas that you've been raised to believe are, in fact, the products of propaganda and aren't true. And for those people who make it into Camp 2, they're perhaps, as you were describing, Debbie, delighted to find a place where they seem to have encountered lots of other like-minded individuals who are asking the critical questions and challenging power.
I think this guy's last name is Hughes, but we'll see it because I'm going to play it again in bigger form.
Unfortunately, what they don't realize is that Camp 2, like Camp 1, is essentially a form of holding pen in terms of people's awareness. And from the very beginning, it has been constructed, I think, by the military. And it's led by certain key actors, certain influencers, if you like, people who are heavily promoted, have very high view counts, are able to write article after article, give interview after interview while flying all around the world, going to conference after conference. Not really very credible in terms of a one-person operation, but nevertheless, they exert a huge degree of influence, and they carry a lot of people in Camp 2 with them. And the purpose of Camp 2 is essentially to make sure that people never make it into Camp 3, which is the truth, or something approximating the truth. And Camp 3 it's a very difficult place to be because the truth is often very hard to swallow. It's a fairly lonely place to be. I don't think there's that many people in Camp 3. Yeah, I mean, the delineations between the 3 camps are not absolutely hard and fast. People do move between the camps, but I think overall it's a useful framework for thinking about the nature of the news and the content that we are consuming, so that not only are we asking critical questions about the official news, but we're also thinking very hard about the alternative media scene, so-called, and the kinds of information that we are acquiring from there. And it does take work. It does take effort. I've only been in this space for 18, 20 months or so. And my experience of it increasingly has been that Camp 3 is very small compared to Camp 2. And Camp 2 is pretty small compared to Camp 1. And so it's almost like peeling back the layers of an onion, peeling back layers and layers of deceit until you finally get to something approximating the truth.
Now, bless his heart, he's been here for about 18 months now, and people like Sherry Tenpenny have been doing this for 25 years. Brian Hooker's been doing this for 25 years. Now, the question becomes, is this really a viable analogy? And I don't think it is, because where's Brian Hooker in this? 25-year veteran of the health freedom movement, never made any progress in messaging or in understanding, just in salary. Where does he fit in here? Is he's camp 2? So Brian believes, you see what's missing here? There's no explanation. What is the truth if you get to camp 3? Is he ever going to say it? What is the truth? He told you what the truth was when he was obfuscating this camp 2 idea as if it's one place. You know, like the lab leak is one place, or you see why this is weak? It sounds like, yeah, I'm in camp 3 because I know the truth. No. Camp 3 is separate camp 3s. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Children's Health Defense and Brian Hooker represent one camp 3. The pro-life movement is a camp 3. You know, the climate change movement might be a camp 3, or the LGBTQ gay pride parade or the fighting against ICE might be camp 3. And people move between different camp 3s. The whole concept of people moving between camps suggests that this is not a very good analogy, because if you don't make any progress, then the whole thing is a show. And so what I'm suggesting is that there are only 3 camp 1s. There are the blue hats, the red hats, and the white hats, you know, the independents. And camp 2s are everywhere, meaning that you can disbelieve the military-industrial complex, or, you know, briefly flirt with the idea that they're seeding the weather, or briefly flirt with the idea that maybe something toxic was burning in that train in Ohio, but then go back to camp 1. And so if you occasionally, you know, go to camp 2 in a podcast or two, or you like a podcaster who likes to go to camp 2, you see, he doesn't explain anything about how this would be accomplished. He doesn't tell you that this is all accomplished using actors on social media on a coordinated script. He says the military did it. I think it's a very curious thing to say that the military did it. You know, it's supposed to be follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. The military has some money, but not as much as banks, not as much as pharmaceutical companies, not as much as the stock market, not as much as derivatives, not as much as, I mean, the list is on and on and on and on. And then to say the military is just kind of weird, especially because there are plenty of military members who would just probably shrug their shoulders and go, I don't know what the hell that guy's talking about, military. Camp 4 is when you start to understand that everyone is coordinatedly lying about it, and understand how it is possible. Because right now, if you get to a camp 3 where they talk about how everybody's on the same team, then you also get to a camp where inevitably somebody believes that also jerky is real, and jerky plays a role in controlling people. And also islands play a role in controlling people. And also, I don't know, botched assassinations and faked assassinations and also real assassinations are part of the control mechanism. It's all just kind of lame. And until you start to understand why it is that things that should result in certain consequences do not, as soon as you start to consider the possibility of checking these people based on what they believe, are they acting that way? Will you be able to see through this? But once you do that, you will be in camp 4, where you realize that these people are working together. You can't choose Brian Hooker and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and hope that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gets into the White House after his presidential running mate is shot, and then saves America. You can't put your eggs in a basket like that. That's Camp 3. That's CHD. That's what did I write down over here while I was listening to this? I don't know where I wrote it. But I think that this is really the key to understanding this. This guy's analogy is enticing, and it's scripted not quite. There's one place where you believe TV. There's one place where you ask questions, but then you get fooled by people who were put in place by the military. And he's no list of people, no best examples. We're just supposed to fill in those blanks, I guess. He's got to guard his, he doesn't want to step on any toes. He doesn't want to get sued for saying the wrong guy's a bad guy, Robert Malone sued somebody for $25 million during the pandemic. I wonder why he won't sue me for calling him a fraud. Kevin McKernan is worth millions of dollars. His dad was worth millions of dollars. His brothers are worth millions of dollars. He is a fraud, and he won't sue me because he can't. Robert Malone and Kevin McKernan are behind the fraud of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and CHD and ICANN. Most likely they are the authors of it, the coordinators of it. And that's just one piece, because there is a pro-life movement with all kinds of people that help to herd those cats. There is a pro-gun movement whose cats are herded. There is an anti-ICE movement whose cats are herded. And the tools for herding cats, the technology for herding cats, the techniques used by these scripted but improvising actors on social media, the techniques are being optimized. And so it's a very, very dangerous place we are right now. And that guy, having only been in this space for 18 to 20 months, is woefully inadequately describing what we are faced with, how it is constructed, never mind completely not answering the question of why, because it's not just because people are greedy and like little girls and also money and drugs. That's not, no. There's got to be a multi-generational motivation that supersedes all of this, blah, 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 a single lifetime concerns. It's got to be a bigger idea than that. Otherwise, it would not explain this. Satanism doesn't explain it. Pedophilia doesn't explain it. Child trafficking doesn't explain it. Drug running doesn't explain it. In order to motivate this many people to participate this flawlessly in a theater, it has to be a multi-generational plan being enacted multi-generationally. These people trust their parents. These people trust, their family and other families. And then you have to really think very carefully about not the phylogeny of life on Earth or the phylogeny of COVID-19 variants. You need to think about the phylogeny of the ideas under whose spell we are currently trapped. You got to follow the ideas, not the money. Mark, you like that one? You must follow the ideas, not the money. Follow the money is a Camp 3. That's what I wrote down. I can't find it on there, but that's now I remember it. Follow the money is a Camp 3. Health freedom is a Camp 3. Shoot, maybe even in some ways homeschooling is a Camp 3. Or, eating meat is a Camp 3. This is the reality, ladies and gentlemen. But once we get this right, once you read this book, I think you're going to see that this was worth the work. It was worth the time. It was worth the effort. This is the way out, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pretty convinced of it. Just to give you some little taste of reality here. In this picture, these are all the people that I've had personal interaction with, shaken their hand, been on there and cast in some way or another. Not insignificant interaction. Let's put it that way. If I then color in the people who have specifically told me that I'm magnificent, that I'm smart, that I'm brilliant, that I'm the most insightful person they've known since the pandemic, blah, 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 then I would color all those people in yellow, which is interesting. And then if I colored in all the people who I've been on actual screen with, or on screen with me, or have been on screen and said my name in a positive way, it would be these people. So this is a pretty significant alien that's landed in my bedroom. Many of these people have been to my house. It's just weird. And the only way that I can explain it is with a Gigaohm Biological high resistance, low noise information brief that just needs to be done. This is a message that is not for everyone, but it is for anyone seeking the truth. You've got to get off social media. Camp 5 and the summit is getting off of social media. That's what it is. Once you get to Camp 5, you're making a run for it and you're not coming back. So this is Camp 4. This is your last stop before you start deleting the apps from your phone. This is the last stop before you start building your own social media, which I hope that everybody will start to do, especially you young people out there. Thank you very much for joining me. Good to see everybody. I'm really excited. This is a good, I'm feeling something here. Like maybe I'm starting to shake this a little bit. I really think it's important to see that nobody ever uses population pyramids on the news to describe financial situations or population situations or budget situations. Nobody ever uses population pyramids for anything because they tell you the truth about a lot of stuff. And you can make a lot of predictions based on what the population pyramid of a country looks like. You can even see the pandemic coming from when I graduated from high school. Thank you very much for joining me. Yes, so when you realize...
We proposed how to make a vaccine without the spike protein, and all this was brushed under the side, and it was like it was a coordinated military, I used the word military campaign, to shut us up and ignore the logical side. We proposed how to make a vaccine.
Once you realize that they're all on a script, everything starts to make sense. Everything starts to make sense.
It was a coordinated military, I used the word military campaign.
None of that is over. And as Sasha Latipa pointed out this morning, you know, these were military operations, but they were global military operations, right? None.
And for those people who make it into Camp 2, they're perhaps, as you were describing, Debbie, delighted to find a place where they seem to have encountered lots of other like-minded individuals who are asking the critical questions and challenging power. Unfortunately, what they don't realize is that Camp 2, like Camp 1, is essentially a form of holding pen in terms of people's awareness. And from the very beginning, it has been constructed, I think, by the military. And it's led by certain key actors, certain influencers, if you like, people.
I just don't think certain key actors, influencers, people who travel around the world and write lots of articles and then he laughs about it, I don't think that's sufficient. I really don't. I think at this stage in 2026, it's okay to say that the guy that fits that profile the best is Robert Malone. The woman that fits that profile the best is either Mary Holland or Meryl Nass. Another man that fits that profile very well is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Another man that fits that profile very well is Aaron Siri. I don't care. We need to think about saying these names, because if you're wrong about a couple of them, it doesn't matter. And this is where I think that you can see that it's not very likely that this guy is actually a good guy. He is a scripted dude who doesn't understand what he's been asked to participate in. And he is part of maintaining a Camp 3. Oh yeah, this guy, he's really good. His Substack is really awesome. He speaks the truth. You know, Camp 3 is real. But what is Camp 3? Do they have any priority list of what Camp 3 finds the most important? No, because there are many Camp 3s. As I said, Camp 3 could easily just be the follow the money Camp 3. The CIA is doing it, is a Camp 3. And before that, in Camp 2, you're just entertaining these ideas by watching podcasts. You're just entertaining this idea by, casual social media use. Until you start doing work, you don't need to get to Camp 3, and Camp 3 has actors in it.
Who are heavily promoted, have very high view counts, are able to write article after article, give interview after interview while flying all around the world, going to conference after conference. Not really very credible in terms of a one-person operation, but nevertheless, they...
So he doesn't imagine that the organizations putting on the conference could be not so credible. He doesn't imagine that something like ICANN, for example, could be a completely sabotaged organization from the start. He doesn't imagine that. He can't imagine that because he just told you the military did it, and it's certain individual actors. Not a coordinated group, but isn't that what the military running it would imply? And I don't really understand why, unless it's a script, somebody would say military when there are an innumerable number of weaponized piles of money that are so big that putting a few podcasters or even hundreds of podcasters out there paying a whole gymnasium full of Indians to tweet shit. Like, these are small expenses if you're talking about weaponized piles of money from which, millions, if not billions of dollars of interest can be drawn every year. This is not a joke. This is serious. And this guy's not answering the questions that he's purporting to answer. Otherwise, he would be telling you that the most dangerous thing out there is coordinated, scripted liars, because it is the exact psychology experiment that I never get which one it is, but it's the one where there are 3 lines and 4 people are in the room with you and they all answer wrong, but since they all answer wrong, you answer wrong. That is what social media can do to you, in not just in programming, but in actual actors and the representation therein. What is the truth? At some point in time, somebody's going to have to say it, right?
That a huge degree of influence, and they carry a lot of people in Camp 2 with them. And the purpose of Camp 2 is essentially to make sure that people never make it into Camp 3.
And I just don't think that this analogy is adequate. So I for example,
maybe get onto something else.
But what would you say to people
like
who feel like they haven't gotten
healthcare,
justice, Mr. President?
Something that people care about. Yeah, what did you say? Go
What
ahead.
would you say to
are
the survivors who feel
you
like they haven't gotten
you are
justice?
The worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. She's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile
Well,
on
I'm
your
asking
face.
you about survivors of Jeffrey Epstein,
You know why
Mr.
you're not
President.
smiling? Because you're not telling the truth. And you're a very dishonest organization, and they should be ashamed of you.
And so that's not a natural reaction to what he says. It's not a natural reaction to what he says at all. I don't care if you want to say she's being professional. I don't care. It's not a natural reaction from a lot of people in the room either. This is the reaction of somebody who is prepared for this improv here, prepared for this to be called a terrible person, a terrible reporter at a terrible network. That's just absurd. This is a theater. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is not the way this woman would react if she were to react in a more natural way or what you would expect. Instead, she keeps such a straight face, even though he says the most ridiculous things about her.
No ratings because of people like you. You know, she's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile.
10 years? He's known her for 10 years, but they're not friends? I mean, come on. This is ridiculous. They've been on stage together for 10 years.
And they should be ashamed.
This is what I mean by if once you realize they are improvising on a script, everything will make sense because you don't need to try and understand it anymore. They're acting something out. Congress has become the official podcast of the U.S. government.
Okay, well, we're gathered here today with a very disappointing outcome of an attempt to hold a debate with physicians, MDs, who, to a person, felt that it was important enough for them to join us on a debate. And there was a slight confusion on their part, apparently, and we're not sure where it fell apart, but we're sitting here in Zoom, and we have prepared our questions. We also are prepared to answer questions that they have on their side, and they have failed to show up. Steve, do you want to fill everybody in on the background of the communications with the other side?
Sure. This started Friday on Clubhouse, and this is and Eli.
It is absolutely impossible that these people are streaming together in November of 2021. Up in the upper left corner is James Lyons Weiler, Skyhorse Publishing book author, Environmental and Genetic Causes of Autism.
Stop lying!
No, really, it's true. Jessica Rose is the surfer girl who worked on vitamin V transporters before the pandemic and was probably recruited by Robert Malone and his little crew. Mark Kulak knows the name of the guy. Ricky, I think is the one that she wrote the review with. Mark Giordano has a Amazon book about the bolus effect, which is the idea that if you inject in the muscle and you hit a vein or artery, it can cause adverse events. And that's the stupidest shit ever. But he was promoted by Panda, exclusively by Nick Hudson and all those people. He's got a book. He is a former pharmaceutical executive on a script. This is the stupidest idea with no basis in biology. And he's gotten a huge Substack from it, just like Jessica Rose has a huge Substack, just like Mike Eden has a huge Substack, former Pfizer employee. You know, like Sasha is a former Pfizer employee. This is a joke. Steve Kirsch is a fraud from a long time ago who invented a really dumb optical mouse, and the idea was so dumb that nobody ever used it. But because the idea was so clever, somebody bought it before they knew how dumb the idea was, and he's famous for that. It's actually true. You can find a video of him describing the technology that he invented, and it's really no more clever than my 10-year-old would have come up with if he was challenged with solving a similar engineering problem. It's a special hint. You had to have a special mouse pad that had a grid on it, otherwise it wouldn't work. So Steve Kirsch is a fraud. He's one of the largest private donors to the DNC before the pandemic. And then behind me is Matt Crawford, who I don't really know who he is. He has Rounding the Earth podcast. He used to have me on his show a lot. He was in the same Signal chat with me and Brett Weinstein and Chris Martinson and Alexandros Marinos, all these people, and his wife in 2021. This is a fraud. These people are Camp 3. They were the many Camp 3s during the pandemic. You found Jessica Rose and you trusted her, and maybe she trusted some people more than other people, but you trusted Jessica. Or before the pandemic, you were already reading James Lyons Weiler's book and you thought he was a genius. Or maybe you were in Panda and then you really liked this guy's idea. Maybe you joined Steve Kirsch's, Vaccine Safety Research Foundation because it sounded good. Maybe you were following Rounding the Earth because, I don't know, I guess he's a great math teacher or something like that. But they all have Substacks. All their Substacks pay more than they need to live. You know, Matt Crawford was telling me that he traded traded billions of dollars on Wall Street right after he got out of high school. But his idea for me in terms of, in 2021 to try and help me find a way to make a living was to put baseball cards into lockers at airports and then to sell shares in those things. I can't make that up. This guy is supposedly a Bitcoin genius, and his solution to my financial problems was to try and start a business with me where we would put valuable trading cards into airport lockers and sell shares in them. And then he went around, telling everybody that JJCouey's lame because I tried to help him start a business and I tried to help him write a book, but I couldn't get him to do anything. So this is a real serious problem because if you go back in time and look at what these people were doing, there are admissions everywhere. Mike Eden should not be on a stream with these people unless it's all one show, and then they split up to do more damage. Because again, Mike Eden was like an island. He was his own little Camp 3. Just like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is, just like, I really don't trust Meryl Nass, but boy, I love Brian Hooker. That's all Camp 3 phenomenon because you've already got the doubt. You already think you've got your answers prioritized, and you've already got a leader. Somebody to tell you, we're just fighting for a big top tent of health freedom. It's a complex political argument that you can't just be a bull in a china shop, yada, yada, yada. It's all the same crap. This lady was talking about spike protein. He was talking about natural immunity. This guy was talking about the bolus effect. This guy's talking about the complex causes of autism. This guy's talking about teaching math and making a curriculum about something and whether or not something about the PCR. And this dude, oh my gosh, how is it possible that anybody trusted the largest private donor to the DNC before the pandemic? Except for Robert Malone, of course, took him on to the Brett Weinstein podcast and introduced all three of them to us. Robert Malone, the guy who I am accusing of being one of the authors of this absolutely ridiculous narrative.
Basically was moderating a room, and we said happy to debate them anytime. And then he called me back and he said they're ready to debate today. And I said, great, but it'll take me a couple of days to get the team together. Let me send you a Zoom link, and we will do a recorded Zoom call. And this way we can first of all, you're not allowed to record on Clubhouse. And the Zoom allows us to see people's faces and who they are and make sure they're legitimate.
That's the real Anthony Fauci book
so there's
right
no
there.
hiding. And the rules of the debate then would be fair on both sides. Everybody would play by exactly the same rules. Each side would be able to ask the other side questions. It would alternate between one side asking the question, and then once they're done and it goes back and forth, then the other side asks the questions. Totally fair debate. We don't control the agenda. We control what questions we ask. They control whatever questions they ask.
My 3 camps of awareness framework, for anyone who's not familiar with it, goes as follows. Camp 1 is the mainstream camp. It's for those who believe essentially everything that their politicians and their television and their radio tells them. They believe in the official narratives, and they've never really learned to think critically, question, or get beyond those dominant narratives. Camp 2 is for people who have learned to ask questions and who do have their doubts about some of the main things that we're being told, be it what happened on 9/11, the origins of the financial crisis, the true nature of the alleged pandemic, etc. And there are those who realize essentially that they have been lied to by the authorities. They are asking critical questions of their own.
Did you hear it? Lied to by the authorities, not lied to by podcasters, but authorities.
Quite a difficult process to go through. not just intellectually, but emotionally, to understand and to recognize that actually many of the key ideas that you've been raised to believe are in fact the products of propaganda and aren't true. And for those people who make it into Camp 2, they're perhaps, as you were describing, Debbie, delighted to find a place where they seem to have encountered lots of other like-minded individuals who are asking the critical questions and challenging power. Unfortunately, what they don't realize is that Camp 2, like Camp 1, is essentially a form of holding pen in terms of people's awareness. And from the very beginning, it has been constructed, I think, by the military, and it's led by certain key actors, certain influencers, if you like, people who are heavily promoted, have very high view counts, are able to write article after article, give interview after interview while flying all around the world, going to conference after conference. Not really very credible in terms of a one-person operation, but nevertheless, they exert.
No mention of organizations being sabotaged at all. We're still talking about individuals with individual agency.
I have no responsibility for the...
Stop lying!
You demon. Anyway, keep going.
A huge degree of influence, and they carry a lot of people in Camp 2 with them. And the purpose of Camp 2 is essentially to make sure that people never make it into Camp 3, which is the truth or something approximating the truth.
That's just really not... That's just at this stage in 2026, at this stage in the conversation that he's having, the truth is not sufficient. To talk about it like the truth or the hat or the pandemic is the dumbest thing ever, especially because he does not elaborate on what the truth is, which is remarkable.
And Camp 3 is it's a very difficult place to be because the truth is often very hard to swallow. It's a fairly lonely place to be.
It's almost like he's describing the truth of the Epstein files and how it's hard to swallow the truth of Satanism being responsible for all the Western ideas that we thought were Judeo-Christian or something like. It's so bad, ladies and gentlemen. Camp 3 and people who think that Camp 3 is the end or are scripted to tell you that Camp 3 is a single location called the truth.
Stop lying!
It's really bad. I mean, that's really bad. I mean, then you should be having an elevator pitch following this up about what the truth is.
I don't think there's that many people in Camp 3. Yeah, I mean, the delineations between the three camps are not absolutely hard and fast. People do move between the camps, but I think overall it's a useful framework for thinking about the nature of the
It is a useful framework if you think about these camps as being interconnected and all meaningless, and there to provide an illusion of depth and the ability to explore and make progress. That's what they are there for. And they are also there to sustain people who do not understand that they themselves are separate Camp 3s. I think the best example that I have is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He believes most of what he's doing. He believes most of the people around him, and those people are the scripted actors responsible for maintaining Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as a Camp 3. And he may have a few other people around him that serve the same role. There are people who do this in the pro-life movement. There are people who do this in any movement that is in need of useful hijacking. This is exactly how they do it. And I do think that there are lots of unwitting victims. Mary Talley Bowden may still not understand that she is also a separate Camp 3, where she's really pissed that nobody's done anything about the mRNA yet. That's a Camp 3. Follow the money to the Epstein files is also a Camp 3. Oh yeah, but they have jerky in the emails is a Camp 3. Anywhere you find yourself in a Camp 3, you will be using their evidence to find their ghosts, and you will be tricked into solving their mysteries and believing in them. That's what it is. That's what Camp 3 is. And all of those people that are there, witting or unwittingly, are performing this theater which traps the other people there. And there have to be enough people there who are in on it, otherwise Camp 3 won't last. And beyond that is where you understand that Camp 3s are all created for us, not 2s. The 2s are podcasters. The 2s are easy. They don't know anything. They are just scripted actors. But above that are, Bill Maher doesn't get it. He's an idiot. Seth Rogen, just name random famous people. They don't get it. I mean, Deion Sanders doesn't know. I mean, these people, none of them have to know. And this guy doesn't have to understand it either. It's a very, very, very few people have made it this high to Camp 4, where you can make a run for the summit. The summit being really just leaving social media behind. And you can only do it once you can really leave it behind.
Using the content that we are consuming, so that not only are we asking critical questions about the official news, but we're also thinking very hard about the alternative media scene, so-called, and the kinds of information that we are acquiring from there. And
the kinds of information that we are acquiring from there. See, he still doesn't have the advanced language that we do here at Gigaohm Biological, where we would say, what kind of information are you acquiring from these alternate media podcasters? Ladies and gentlemen, we said it on the last stream. You are acquiring... Whoops, that's not an echo. You are acquiring... You are being imposed upon. You are being coerced into accepting the working assumptions of the podcasters. And it is those implied and taught working assumptions that result in Camp 3 feeling real. If your working assumption is that Camp 3 is the truth, then it feels awesome. If your working assumption is that you worked really hard to get to Camp 3 before you found Brian Hooker, it feels real. That's what this is. I really think that's where we are.
It does take work. It does take effort. I've only been in this space for 18, 20 months or so.
I mean, think about what that means. He had no principles for the first 4 years of the pandemic. He was doing other shit. How is that even, how is he even relevant? Why are we even talking to him? I've been here for 4 or 5 years. I crossed paths with these people. I know who he's talking about, and I can explain it better because this is an inadequate explanation. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and CHD are a Camp 3. Follow the Money, Ian Carroll is a Camp 3. There are lots of separate Camp 3s because they aren't the truth either.
And my experience of it increasingly has been that Camp 3 is very small compared to Camp 2, and Camp 2 is pretty small compared to Camp 1. And so it's almost like peeling back the layers of an onion, peeling back layers and layers of deceit until you finally get to something.
I don't care how you get there. I don't care what you do to get there. The goal is to win.
What time is it? Game time! Woo!
Of course, the heater came on, so you hear a little extra noise in the background. Ladies and gentlemen, podcasters are not real people. These people were scripted actors, and it's very, very bad. They're traitors to our kids. We've got to wake up and apologize to our children. When you realize that they are all improvising on a script, everything makes sense. That's for me. the magic of it. When you realize that these people are improvising on a script, everything makes sense. I mean, everything. The facial expressions, the reaction or lack thereof. This really is. This really is not a revolution that will be podcast. This is not a podcast. This is a broadcast for mature audiences only. Their glasses match for a reason. Their glasses match for a reason. Ladies and gentlemen, their profiles match for a reason. It's not for everybody, baby, but if you want to know the truth, this is your place. This is Camp 4 on your way to the summit. The summit being dropping off of social media. How this show works is that people financially support the stream, viewers consistently share, spread the word, and biology finds new people, and kapow, this place grows. Right now we're not growing, but that's I still have faith that we will. We are still putting this out on our own platform using the open source code called PEERTUBE. You can download it, you can install it on your phone. It's a 4-step process. You click on more platforms, you type Giga, a button shows up that says add your URL. You do that, and voila, Gigaohm will be on your phone. And that's pretty cool because this is very different than Rumble or YouTube or anything else. It is all under your control with none of your information. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. This is Gigaohm Biological, a high-resistance, low-noise information brief. Brought to you by a biologist. I've got a lot of experience with Camp 4. It took me a long time to get here. It's not insulting to Mr. Hughes. I'm sure in the last 18 to 20 months, he's been working really hard to figure stuff out, but he's got a long way to go. He's got a long way to go. This is not a podcast. This is reality streamed live daily. We've got to stay focused, not take their bait on social media, and love our neighbor. Unfortunately, I was put into contact with Jayanta Bhattacharya several times during the pandemic with what I thought were random circumstances I've now come to understand as a very elaborate theater put together by rich people. And it's annoying because that means it wasn't military, or at least it wasn't military in the way that clown says it, or the way that Sasha Latipova or Merritt Holland or Catherine Watts said it. No, it's a public-private partnership of sorts that I think involves a lot of Commonwealth nations. It's a surprising number of Indians. I have met Jayanta Bhattacharya at least 3 times. The last time I met him, he said I should shut up about Robert Malone because he was about to be NIH director, and the only way he could have known that is if it was true. America is being sabotaged. I don't think that this guy has the professional, expertise to lead any large organization, never mind the NIH where Francis Collins used to work. And so I don't know what to say about why this guy used to call me a genius and used to defer to me as the biologist, and now is at the head of NIH and not doing any of that anymore. And instead, the guy who's promoted him there, the guy I was supposed to stop talking about, writes a very lucrative Substack about homesteading and swine flu. America is under attack. We're being sabotaged. We have no real help from our allies because they are all under the same social media spell that our own citizens are. So whose word are you taking for it? In the Netherlands, you might be taking these people's word for it. Monday and Tuesday this week, these actors that I've interacted with, including that Belgian guy over there, the author of the mass psychosis illusion, whose word are you taking for it? How about Jayanta Bhattacharya?
There's a kind of a commitment. This administration, your administration, came in to power with an agenda to end gain-of-function research. So for starters, where are we at with that?
We made a lot of progress, and the White House is still working on a formal policy. But actually, can I back up just to set the stage for this? So there's a few things. So one is what is gain-of-function research, and why would anyone want to do it? So that I think is important to understand. And then second, how should you regulate it so that dangerous projects that have the risk of catastrophic harm to human populations never happen? So let's do that in stages, right? So first, gain-of-function research by itself is not necessarily a bad thing. Dangerous gain-of-function research is necessarily bad. Let me. It sounds like I'm making a too fine a point.
And so he's not making too fine a point. What he's doing is dividing something fake into two parts, which makes it seem more real. If I just were to say to you, sneak up behind you and say, hey, do you want 4 pieces or 2 pieces? That question already implies a working assumption, and you're going to be asking yourself, pieces of what? I wonder, is it a candy bar or is it a pizza? I don't smell a pizza. And so the whole question, when I come up behind you, do you want 4 pieces or 2, implies that there's something that has a total of 6 pieces. And then you turn around and I'm not holding anything. And so that's a magic trick that you can play on a kid. It's a magic trick that a podcaster can play on you by saying gain of function, dangerous gain of function is bad, but good gain of function is good. And now gain of function is real because you've been coerced unconsciously to accepting the working assumption of what he just said. That's the magic of neuro-linguistic programming.
Distinction, but let me just give you an example, right? So human insulin, which is used to treat diabetes, is often produced by taking a bacteria and then giving it a gene that allows it to produce insulin. And you cook the bacteria up and it produces insulin. That's a gain of function.
That is not a gain of function. Ladies and gentlemen, that's transformation of bacteria. It has a word that has a 20-year or 30-year or even 40-year history. It's a very precise word. You put a gene in the form of a plasmid. This is basic recombinant genetics. This is basic Human Genome Project, now being described as friendly neighborhood gain of function in bacteria.
Stop lying!
It's actually not even stop lying because he doesn't understand. I actually believe that. I believe that he's not a biologist. I believe that he's learned this script well enough to improvise on it. He's learned the concepts well enough to improvise on them. Just like if I was to briefly review the Greek mythology of Perseus and whatever, and how his wings melted or something like that, that I could improvise on that story. And he has learned this script well enough to improvise on it. And that improvisation gives it that real, down home, honest feel. And again, combine that with neuro-linguistic programming, where his language coerces you into accepting working assumptions, like, do you want 4 pieces or 2?
Didn't used to be able to produce insulin, but the genetic manipulation makes it able to produce insulin.
Right, and now you can create large amounts of insulin for use.
For inexpensively, right? So that's completely legitimate, and we don't want to get rid of that, right? Because diabetics depend on having the availability.
That is not gain of function, right? That is recombinant bacterial genetics. It is how every protein biologic on Earth is made, and protein biologics are purified through anion exchange chromatography, which cannot be used on an RNA vaccine transfection, and so they didn't use it. And that's why it was always known to be contaminated. If you make the RNA using bacteria, then there would be no way to adequately clean it. They knew that from the very beginning because this is a very old methodological tool set that has been used to make protein biologics for decades. Actually cuts that short one step, and so it's really, really very cheap. So this whole idea that he knows what he's talking, he's been scripted to know exactly enough to bullshit this guy. That's it.
Of insulin. On the other hand, going into the back caves of southern China, bringing a virus out of
Now the funny thing is that they were already talking about bat caves in the 50s, and it was Hillary Kaprowski that was talking about bat caves in the 50s and viruses that would come out of them. It almost like this is a narrative that has been scripted and stuck to for more than one generation. Maybe it has some multi-generational goals in mind. Maybe it has a multi-generational timeline in mind. And so that's why somebody from India who did his entire academic career at Stanford, finds himself talking about lab leak viruses from bat caves the same way that Hillary Kaprowski would have talked about them or wrote about them in the book Man and His Future. Interesting. Woo-ha! Interesting.
That never had previously infected any human, or maybe one or two at most, bringing it into a lab in a huge city in China with poor biosafety protocols, and then manipulating it to make it more transmissible among humans. Well, that's a gain of function. That's a dangerous gain of function that should not ever be supported, should not ever be done. Right? So there's a distinction between gain of function and dangerous gain of function. That's really important to know. We want to make it so that there's never any support or interest in doing that kind of dangerous work ever again. That's the policy of the administration. The president signed an executive order in I think in April or May, where he said that the policy is, and I wholeheartedly support that policy. I think that is a very, very wise policy. The question is, how do you implement it? And how do you create the incentive so that never this sort of...
Remember, Sasha Latypova is also an American thought leader. Robert Malone is also American thought leader. The list is endless of the clowns that I have personally interacted with who are also considered American thought leaders by this elite foreign website publication thing.
Research doesn't happen again. So let me go backwards again, because I'm sure people who are listening are asking, why on earth would anyone support such a research program in the first place? Bringing the viruses out of the bat caves and so on. It arose out of a utopian vision by certain scientists that we could prevent all pandemics if we were allowed to do this kind of research. The idea was, now going back probably 2 decades.
So again, we're talking about ideas, and the idea is a utopian idea where we could prevent all pandemics. Does that sound reasonable to you? Does that sound like the utopian idea? Because, I got to be honest with you, I think it's bullshit. The utopian idea that I think that these people all think is a pretty good idea is a multi-generational utopian idea called eugenics. I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but eugenics is something that Bill Gates' dad was really interested in. And so if you think about a multi-generational plan where people think a very good idea is a good idea, and I think in principle eugenics is a great idea. I do think that in theory there are people who probably shouldn't have kids. And I do think that biologically speaking, there's pretty good evidence out there in nature that smart people breeding with smart people makes more smart kids. That's not a bad idea. I think healthy people that are strong with good musculature that breed together actually build other people with big, strong muscles. You just have to look at The Rock and his family and his parents. His dad was a giant who selected his mom based on her bone structure and stuff. And that's why they got The Rock as a kid. And so eugenics is, as creepy as it might sound to hear from a mudblood American like me, eugenics is a not bad idea. What's wrong with wanting to be healthier in the future and having healthy people breed together, and maybe people that have genetic disorders or genetic deformities or genetic weaknesses should think about not having kids? That can't be. If you think about this from the perspective of good, you can even imagine people being convinced and raised in such a way that they go along with this. That we have different jobs for people that, you could imagine a utopian society where that would all work out. You can imagine a utopian society where people would be taught this from such an early age that they would just accept that some people can't have kids, that it's a real honor to be selected to have children because that means that your genes or your potential inheritance is good enough for them to invest in. What would be wrong with that? And conversely, what if already back in the 50s, there was already a room full of people who agreed that that was a good idea, but also understood that there was no way they were going to convince average people that this was a good idea. And so then they were smart enough to sit down and go, well, how would we conduct eugenics without anybody knowing we were doing eugenics? How would we think about Bill Gates' conundrum? Because this is a pretty big conundrum. Bill Gates' son turned out to be an idiot. Bill Gates this is the big Bill Gates. Big Bill Gates wanted to have a son that would want to dominate the world and have the intellect to do it. But Bill Gates' dad was a giant man. He was 6'9" and he was super smart. And I don't think Bill Gates Jr. has lived up to the expectations or promise of his father. But his father still thinks that eugenics is a good idea. And so he wants his son to have children because his son still has his genes. Maybe he can, pull out of the nosedive and his children will be smarter. But if Bill Gates Sr. really wants to, have big ideas and they're eugenic ideas, then he's not going to be around to see that. He's part of a plan that is longer than his lifetime, longer than his son's lifetime, longer than his grandson's lifetime. That's a pretty big plan. You have to be a pretty smart person to think about a plan like that and then to think about, well, I'm going to enact it. In other words, you need to start thinking about what trees these people are thinking about planting that they know they're not going to sit under. Because I assure you, the smartest people with the most resources are thinking that way. That is how you understand what Camp 4 is. That's how you understand how to get beyond Camp 4 to the summit, is to start understanding what ideas are enticing enough, are motivating enough, are promising enough that you would participate in their execution without ever seeing the result, knowing you would never see the result. That's where Bill Gates' dad lived his life, knowing that there was no way all of the pieces of the puzzle would be put in place for his vision of the future. But he had the foresight enough to have that vision and to envision the steps that would be required to get there. That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about entrepreneurs that have a vision for their business. We're talking about intellectuals that have a vision for the future that is generations ahead. And that is a eugenicist. That is eugenics. That is taking control of the evolution of the species. And then you've really got to sit down and wallow in that idea. Because if you do, you will start to understand what's really going on here. This is not a man intellectually capable of sitting at that table. Kevin McKernan might be, Robert Malone might be, Francis Collins might be, Mark Lander might be, but this guy's not. No way. Dr. Drew is not. Jessica Rose is not. But if you follow this stream and you stay here and you keep this place going and you keep the lights on in this stream, I assure you eventually you will understand the set of ideas that could motivate people across generations, that could motivate people to dream about the world that their grandchildren will be in. That's what does it. Once you see it, you'll understand why we need a new biology to save us from it.
That certainly a decade and a half ago. If we can go out into the wild places, capture every single virus or pathogen that's out there, bring it into the lab, and then test it to see if they have some chance of infecting humans. If they're close in evolutionary...
He's describing the experiment in the wrong way, right? If we could collect every genome that was available, and we could collect as much medical data as possible from those genomes from birth until death, we might be able to assemble a data set that if we could then build the computer network necessary to store and feed that data set into a machine learning algorithm, we might be able to bypass what otherwise would be a multi-generational plan to enrich the evolution of the human species. Bypass it, shortcut it, so that maybe Bill Gates could see the fruits of the labor earlier. That's the vision that all of these people in the background might have. Some of them are motivated by it. Some of them know that that's a far-fetched dream and that this is just a plan. Now, what you need to understand, I think, is that without really grasping what the population pyramids of these countries reveals, you don't see that they don't need to get rid of us. They don't need the decline in consumption and materialism and fossil fuel use is already built into the population pyramid. The reason why they can let the infrastructure of America collapse is because there aren't going to be that many people driving cars in the future. There aren't going to be that many people in the future. And the people that are there in the future will be enslaved. And so I think that we are running out of resources. I do think the resources on the planet are finite, but I do think the people on the planet, the populations on the planet are finite. And because we are so incapable of imagining the future as it is portrayed by the population pyramids, it's hard to see that the decline is built in. And that's why they have been freely using the resources of the planet in the way that they use it, because they know that the planet and its population is going to decline before the finite resources run out. Are there finite resources? Yes. But nobody on Easter Island is having kids anymore. So it doesn't matter.
Space, so they have a chance of making a leap into humans. Then we should prepare in advance for all of them that are close. But how do you tell if they're close? Well, you do that by making the viruses or the pathogens.
See, he's learned the whole script. This is a script that I understood in 2020, that I was trying to tell everybody about on my bike. This is how virology works. It is impossible in 2026 that we have an Indian, foreign-born NIH director who heard it from me that this is bullshit in person over tacos at a party with many, many millionaires. It is impossible that that happened by accident. It is impossible that this happened by accident. Please, someone, take this seriously.
More pathogenic, seeing if they infect human cells by making them more pathogenic. How much manipulation do you have to do before it infects human cells? If it's only a little, then we should prepare for that. If it takes a lot or it's not possible, then you can just ignore it. Right? It's essentially a triaging kind of operation. First,
a triaging operation headed by Nathan Wolfe and Peter Daszak. Oh, come on.
Fly collecting all the pathogens of the world, trillions and trillions. Not possible to do all of them, but you can certainly pay people to make a good start, and then after you've identified which ones are most likely to make.
Sounds like a very detailed effort to characterize a background signal that then, when they needed, they could characterize it as a spreading pandemic. Do you see? He's learned the script, and he's not sophisticated enough to know how he's being used. He was just told over and over again that JJCouey is an idiot or not to be trusted, or you'll get a job if you listen to me instead. He's basically a Camp 3, and he is an unwitting Camp 3 himself, because he's controlled by people like Robert Malone and Merrill Nass and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Marty McCary and Vinay Prasad. He thinks they're all good, or he's one of them. One or the other.
The leap, you prepare countermeasures in advance. Vaccines, antivirals, and so on. Stockpile them, even though that virus has never made a leap into humans at that point stage.
He goes on in this interview to say that he thinks that COVID came from a lab leak. It's despicable. It's wrong. I called it years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, the truth is available. None of these people will address any of these points. So if you want to just start with these points, you can, and feel free to use them as you will. Vaccine, the word or the term, and its derivatives are useless words. Oh, darn. I don't know why that happened. Intramuscular injection is just dumb. Autism spectrum is a myth. Wild RNA pandemics are a myth. Gain of function is a myth. DNA is not proof of evolution. That's not me saying that DNA is not real. That's not me saying that autism isn't real. That neurodiversity, that kids aren't born off. That's not what I'm saying. And make no mistake about it, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that people aren't vaccine injured or injured by the transfection for COVID. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying that these are the mythologies that we are controlled by. They have to have some truth in there. These weaponized piles of money are using scripted acolytes on social media to convince us to argue about things and with whom to argue about those things. Participating in those arguments accepts the premise of their narratives by default, and we are governed by this theater that spans from mainstream media to all social media platforms and includes all sides of their mythologies. Why would they do it? Because they have a multi-generational plan to try and take over the evolution of the species, and that requires bamboozling a generation into becoming experimental animals without knowing it, or scaring them into doing it, or a combination of both. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gigaohm Biological. Again, I come to you live from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. That's near Pittsburgh, in the South Hills, the home of Thomas Crooks, the guy who nicked the ear of Donald Trump with a perfect shot from the roof.
So when you look through the emails that eventually came out, took time. I think some of them weren't available until 2023. But it's very obvious that in January of 2020, the NIH was very concerned about their possible ties to this lab in Wuhan. You see internal questions going back and forth.
So here we have a Maha Institute presentation with Jay Bhattacharya sitting uncomfortably at the end of a row that includes this Tauberger, the current head of NIDA, the current replacement for Tony Fauci, who's a longtime flu guy. It's just kind of a joke.
With Fauci. And then you have this call on February 1st, 2020, where Fauci reports back, yeah, guys, they think this virus isn't normal, and surprise, it happened in Wuhan. We're funding research there on gain-of-function research. And there became this full-on, it was very obvious, this attempt to distract people away from NIAID to come out and protect Eco Health Alliance. Jeffrey Taubenberger, you're on some of these emails that I've seen that have become public. What was happening inside NIH when all the scrutiny was coming on to NIH and the Eco Health Alliance? What was happening internally? And how were you guys dealing with that? And what did you think about what you were involved with and then what you're seeing? Because I'm sure you've read some of the emails too.
A need-to-know basis improvising scripted actor doesn't have all the answers. They know what they're allowed to say. They know what they're supposed to say about other stuff. Jeffrey Tauberger is a guy who's very well read in. I'm sure that he understands that RNA virology is an elaborate hoax. I'm sure that he understands that the vaccine schedule itself is an elaborate hoax because vaccine's an irrelevant term because it has no specificity in methodology, nor does it have a specificity of content. A vaccine can be literally anything put anywhere as long as your intention is, I guess, to augment the immune system of someone. And that's just preposterous. But he will go along with it because he is a well-trained scripted actor, national security scripted actor. Jay Bhattacharya is a new addition to the team, a new acolyte that in a few years he might be useful at a different position.
So, as was already discussed, the origin of the SARS-CoV-2 virus is not clearly understood, but the two substantial hypotheses that are there is that it had a lab origin or that it had a natural origin. We don't have the definitive data, as you mentioned, to lay that out. But those two possibilities have been the likely possibilities from the very beginning, and there's data that supports either one. So in terms of what we were seeing were discussions of that. In case, in my research group, we were discussing those two hypotheses right away and trying to look for what we could learn from those genomes. At the leadership level, I can't say what was going on. I wasn't involved.
So we don't need to watch this, but I'm just trying to show you that these things are going to be perpetuated. We were ahead of this years ago. This is a year-old slide. Endemicity is a myth, is both a process and an endpoint. They did it with non-specific PCR tests. They characterized the background, and then they rolled it out. Using their tests to find their ghost doesn't make their ghost real, nor does it make you a Ghostbuster. And using their emails to understand how people went to islands and were controlled doesn't make this whole island thing completely real. And it certainly doesn't make you a guy who's figuring it out. This is part of the controlled demolition of the idea of America. It is a bad plan. It's a terrible plan. I don't like it. But the reason why I'm a little bit optimistic is because the plan is based on bullshit biology, and I'm a biologist. So if I can coach anybody about this stuff, I will be very happy. That's why there's a fake anti-vax movement in America, because this is for all the marbles. Biology is the way, definitely is the way. And this guy's not a biologist. This is absolute bullshit. It is Unbelievable bullshit.
When do you think Optimus will be a better surgeon than the best surgeons? How long for that?
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
3 years, and Optimus, the operating robot that supposedly is in development by Elon Musk, who also makes electric cars and builds tunnels and also an internet in the sky. That guy, complete scripted fraud, more successful than any human could be because he's a scripted fraud. This guy is now telling us that there will be surgeons that are better than the best human surgeon in less than 3 years at scale.
Yeah. And by the way, that's
it. 3 years at scale.
Yes.
Meaning there'll probably be more Optimus robots that are great surgeons than there are all surgeons on Earth.
And that is such a preposterous statement to make. How is he allowed to make a statement like that?
The cost of that, but that's an important statement in 3 years' time.
Yeah.
An important statement. Why don't you say preposterous?
Because medicine, I mean,
I'm not like absolutely certain, but I'd say if you say like 4 years, I'd be absolutely certain.
Oh, I'm not absolutely certain with 3 years, but if you said 4 years, then I would be absolutely certain. I mean.
4 or 5 years, who cares?
Extreme precision.
Yes.
3 years. Yes. Better than any, probably, I'd say if you like put a little margin on it, better than any human in 4 years.
Who's in plastic surgery.
By 5 years, it's not even close.
I think your point was medicine is going to be effectively free. The best medicine in the world.
Everyone will have access to medical care that is better than what the president receives right now.
So don't.
Oh my gosh, it's so stupid. But the only way you can process this and not go crazy is to understand that he is a scripted actor. This is the reaction that I'm feeling right now is the same reaction that my aunt in Connecticut has whenever you talk about Donald Trump. And you've got to step back from it. We are still at Camp 4 and it's cold here. But man, oh man, you got to step back from it because as we make our run for the summit, we're going to leave all this behind. We're leaving social media for good. And if that's the goal, then we're leaving all these jokers behind. But it's brutal. It's brutal.
I'm going to medical school.
Yes, pointless.
Yeah. Pointless to go to medical school because Elon Musk is building a freaking robot. This is Theranos times 1,000,000. This is compound scripted retarded.
Unless you, but I would say that applies to any form of education. It's not like I do it for social reasons.
Yeah,
you're not going to medical school.
If you want to hang out with like-minded people, I suppose.
Ladies and gentlemen, everybody's got a timeline. I suggest that you look into mine. I think I stand by where I am, what I say, what I'm doing. I believe that I can't stop. I am very grateful for all the people that support me every month. I cannot thank you enough for having the faith and trust in me that I'm still, going to pull this off, and I definitely am. I'm so excited about the kid book right now because it has taken a long time for it to form, and it's now forming, and I'm just excited. I'm excited as heck. Don't forget that this happened. I told you this was going to happen. It is still happening in the sense of this noosphere is still being created and optimized across the West so that the conservative movements across all of these nations can effectively be influenced by America and by the Commonwealth and by whoever these people are. We can figure it out if we collectively pull our heads out. I do really think we can figure it out. You can clearly see that there's something very bad going on if you have to pay $25 for a live stream.
Any of us did. I did not predict I was going to put Robert Kennedy Jr. as HHS secretary.
This is the only video I have of it. It was a leaked video at the end. This is Del Bigtree speaking. I want you to listen very carefully. He's going to say that he didn't predict that he was going to do this. He didn't predict that he would, be a hero. He didn't predict that he would run Bobby Kennedy as president. And at the very end, when the crowd starts clapping, he says something that's so damning and so obviously scripted and admission that I am 1,000% right, that Mark Kulak is 1,000% right, you're going to be shocked. So I'm just going to resume the show. I'm going to click back a slide so it starts over again.
I did not. All any of us did. I did not predict I was going to put Robert Kennedy Jr. as HHS Secretary. I did not know that Vax would do the things it would do. All I did was today I'm going to make a movie and tell the truth. Today I'm going to tell Robert Kennedy Jr. I think you should run for President of the United States. It's crazy. It looks terrible on paper, and if we all thought it through and how's that going to work out, no one would have.
That's the German guy, Heiko, so whatever. This is the mass formation psychosis Belgian guy that I spoke to in person in 2024 in November at the Brownstone in Pittsburgh and told them that these guys were liars and explained it to him in Dutch, and he just stared at me. That Andrew Briggan guy has put all these guys in some, parliament room and had them talk about the lab leak virus. And then sitting there on the far end is going to be that dude that I showed you earlier that says it's a military thing and I was going to make a vaccine without the spike protein and they ignored me.
Never moved. We were just sat there petrified. The paralysis of analysis. Stop.
And Peter McCullough at the end there. So it's just a absolute shit show of scripted liars. And it's really, these are scum. At this point, they are scum. It's horrible.
Analyzing where this is going. Who cares if it's going to be in the food?
There's Ivor Cummings on the far right. I don't know how much he's capable of understanding, but he feels an awful lot like a scripted, not quite person, like all of these guys are.
I don't know if it's going to be the tobacco. None of us know exactly what this agenda is, but what they need is our compliance.
None of us know what the agenda is. You see, there's no reason to say that. He's been at this for 20 years. He still doesn't know what the agenda is? Are you serious?
They need us frozen in fear, thinking about how big this is and how gigantic it seems to move. You want to move a mountain, you move it by moving one grain of sand at a time.
One grain of sand at a time. You know what you better do? You better pick up a shovel, Dell, because moving one grain of sand at a time has gotten you rich and gotten no one else and saved no one else and changed nothing. Holy shit.
And focus on your grain today. You are here for a reason. We are born right now for a reason. This is our time. You are God's people. We will win this if you get up every morning and say, this is the most important time that's ever been. We as a species are being passed.
What did he say? You are God's children. You were born at this time for a reason. This is the most important time to be alive. We as a species, is that what he said? I think I heard that. I think I heard something about we as a species. We as a species.
For a reason. This is our time. You are God's people. We will win this if you get up every morning and say, this is the most important time that's ever been. We as a species are being passed.
Now, what you need to understand is that if you were going to enact a multi-generational plan that would allow a kind of eugenics to be enacted without anybody really understanding what it is, then you would need to take advantage of the natural curiosity and tendencies of humans and use all of the myths and stories and tendencies and music and art that you could use in order to bend humanity toward this goal without knowing that it was happening. Of course, the time frame helps. Of course, social media helps, but scripted actors that are improvising on that script to the point where they actually say something like, we as a species. The same thing that they say here, we as a species. The same thing that they say here, we as a species. I'm not really sure how much more dead on balls accurate we could be with this, but we are pretty dead on balls accurate. I hope you're having a good time being dead on balls accurate with Gigaohm Biological. It has been a lot of fun. Don't forget, RNA cannot pandemic.
It's like Jay said, the RNA can't pandemic. It can't.
And don't forget that this health freedom movement is a trap that I fell for too. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. There's nothing to be ashamed about. You don't need to shame your family members. If you want to save them from it, send them to Gigaohm Biological and we will help them escape. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got a lot of experience with these people. So, it's a unique resume that I've got. If I can help you in any way, please let me know.
Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about...
Do you remember when...
I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim
because
time
this
when
is
you don't,
bigger than Watergate.
When I don't answer a question the way
this
you
goes
want.
over 4 administrations.
Over 4 administrations, all the way back to George W. Bush. It's an interesting statement to make because Mark Kulak and myself have now kind of coalesced around the idea that 9/11 was the big kickoff of this bio-warfare experiment planned thing that is one with the Department of Energy, one with nukes, one with the State Department, and one with the Human Genome Project. And so it's really funny that this scripted but improvising actor says that this goes back to all the way to George W. Bush. That would be 9/11, Bio 9/11, that was probably supposed to be an anthrax attack, but then somebody changed it or decided that they didn't need to do that, or I don't know what, and they went with the letters and Steve Hatfield instead. Steve Hatfield, the guy that's on his team now.
You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And you are responsible for this portion of it. Do you remember when Rand Paul and Tony Fauci did the same thing? And you are responsible for this portion of it.
Stop lying.
I have no responsibility for the current pandemic.
Do you remember that?
I have no responsibility for the current pandemic.
I remember it. Congress is the official podcast of the American government. You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, this has always been an elaborate hoax. They told you an elaborate story about biology that doesn't make sense, about biology about something that wasn't there, and now it's there, and it went endemic, and that's just ridiculous. You can understand what happened by focusing on these 3 years and specifically what these clowns were not doing during those 3 years. Because during those 3 years, I lost a house and a career and income and everything. It's not a mystery virus. It's this list. Opioid deaths are part of the worst part of this because that is the sole source of the mathematical reduction in life expectancy in America that our own NIH director has been told by me, but seems to ignore in his calculations. The opportunity was the population pyramid problem. But that's not the idea that motivated people to take advantage of that opportunity. The idea that motivated people to take advantage of the opportunity presented by the population pyramid problem is the focus of my book. And the idea that we need to teach to our children and make sure that they reject. It was an anticipated rise in all-cause mortality that was managed using murder and sophisticated lies. It's visible right here. After I graduated from high school, you can see it coming. And I guarantee you that Ted Turner and all these other people saw it coming. And it was an opportunity to make significant progress in a multi-generational plan to enhance the evolution of the human species. Yes, that's what I'm saying. They are managing that particular portion of the population pyramid as an excuse. Ladies and gentlemen, it's scary because it's true. This book is the most valuable book on my bookshelf. It is the most valuable book in recent American history because it is a window into how it is done, how Camp 3 is created, how Camp 3s are maintained and used against us as weapons. Thank you very much for being here. I think this is the end. I really can't stress enough how everybody's timeline is significant. It is not insignificant, the timeline of Jessica Rose. It's not insignificant that I am able to say this so clearly, and no one else is. This is Camp 4. This is the truth. These people are scripted actors. They perpetuated this nonsense. You can go on their timeline and find
actually
out.
have degrees in applied mathematics, immunology, computational biology.
They even told us.
Okay, over the last 3 years, you have been subjected to the most massive, harmonized, globally coordinated propaganda campaign in the history of the Western world, full stop.
So 500,000 Americans killed by the opioid pandemic and
from everything I've read, is that
it is not insignificant that I have all of these quotes from all of these people, that I've shaken their hands, that I've talked to them, that I've tried to change their minds. It's not insignificant that this guy called me chemtrail retarded or barracks bitch boy. This is some serious shit. And it's also not insignificant that we have a recording of Tucker Carlson saying
You can
this.
tell if someone's lying. You know, you can sort of feel it in people.
The one thing I am confident of from everything
And I
I've
have
read
lied.
is
I'm
that
sure I'll
this
lie
RNA
again. I don't want to
exists,
lie.
you can
You know,
capture
I don't think I'm a liar. I try not to be a liar. I don't want to be a liar. I think it's like really important not to be a liar.
It's not insignificant that this guy came to my house. It's not significant that he was scripted throughout the pandemic to say worst case scenario, spike protein, amyloid, prion.
Just it's literally turning into worst case scenario.
It's not insignificant that he's streamed for years with Charles
tells
Rixey,
us
who
that we're
also
dealing
came
with
to my
essentially-
house. It's not insignificant that these people only
I'm
got
not
together
sure
to
exactly
discuss
who
me and Robert Malone and stuff like that. These people are scripted. Oh, it's awful. And it is not insignificant that on the VSRF Clot Roundtable, it was Kevin McKernan and Kevin McCairn. It's not insignificant at all that this guy has murderous memes of me committing suicide with a shotgun on his streams. It's not insignificant. It is American history that this guy went on a podcast and told this story, which doesn't make any sense because it's a story he could have told in 2020 if it's what he really believed in 2024. But it's not, because he's a scripted actor who was designed and scripted to bring us there over 4 years. And if he could have, he would have had me be the guy to tell everybody the story on this podcast. But because I pulled out of this book as an intellectual advisor and tried desperately to stop its publication, he was forced to stay on stage. Charles Rixey is going to be on stage. Jessica Rose are on stage because they couldn't replace themselves with people like me. This is a failure, and if we keep pushing on this, it will break. I assure you. Because I was a member of Drastic. I said diffuse was fake before Veritas ever announced it. I said it was fake before Rixey ever announced it. McKernan invited himself onto my stream in December of 2021 when I had already said that diffuse was bullshit and dropped out of Drastic. And a couple weeks later, Charles Rixey came to my house to plead for me to join again. About a month later, I was called by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, who I know to be scripted national security frauds. Most likely, Ron Johnson has been read in on what he's doing, at least to the extent is necessary. I was offered to go to Tokyo and work with McCairn by Steve Kirsch. I have the text messages and the voicemails. These people, it's not weird. This is evidence of America being sabotaged. The people who are doing it, I'm giving you their names, and I'm not afraid of being sued because you can't sue people for the truth. It is not insignificant that the NIH director follows the guy who has memes of me with a shotgun in my mouth. The same guy that I met 3 times at a multimillionaire's party over tacos. That's not insignificant that the guy who brought me there is the greatest skateboarder of all time and one of my best supporters in the beginning. That's not insignificant. That's serious. It's not insignificant that I've met Jimmy Dore in person and gave him a copy of the book and shook his hand and told him that these people were fake. And now Brian Hooker, a 16-year employee of the Department of Energy, a transformer and transfector of plants to make medicine, is now a podunk retired biology professor and chief scientific officer of the fraudulent organization Children's Health Defense, when in 2013 he didn't say the word autism.
condition that we will not call autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged. He was neurologically damaged. A condition that we will not call autism. I don't like the word autism.
This video is not insignificant either.
Dr. Fauci talked a lot about isolation and purification.
This video is of the man that I think Joshua Lederberg helped to script in order to punt on genetics. Essentially, Joshua Lederberg helped David Baltimore to establish the idea of animal viruses and the Baltimore scheme, when in reality, what that is a very stupid narrative that pretends that bacteria and bacteriophages and all of that biology doesn't really exist, and that we can use PCR to talk about all of his biology. And that's why this particular video exists and why his particular attitude in this video exists, because it was during this time, the creation of the myth of HIV, that the illusion of animal virology, separate from and independent from bacterial biology, was being created by this guy, very much scripted by Joshua Lederberg. You know, that dude that nobody talks about that was head of the Rockefeller Institute for decades.
Can you tell me what the difference is between the two?
Isolation, what was it?
Isolation and purification.
Of the virus?
Yes.
Well, you isolate a virus by finding the virus which causes a disease. You purify a virus by making a lot of, just by purifying it so you get a pure virus.
Okay.
I don't understand what the issue.
They interchange the two, and I wasn't sure
I see.
If it was the same thing or if it was two totally different.
No, it depends on how they use it.
Okay. Can you explain the process of HIV isolation?
Well, didn't Dr. Gallo do that? He actually isolated it. So, yeah. Why should I do all of this? This is all textbook stuff you're asking me.
Thank you very much for being here, ladies and gentlemen. Autism spectrum disorder is a myth. It's a very complicated story about a very complicated set of biological observations that is contaminated by stupid thinking like this book, in order to make sure that nobody questions intramuscular injection as being dumb, that nobody questions virology as being exaggerated as a high-fidelity science, that nobody questions public health as a reason. Think about how many Substacks have been written in the past 6 years and have never come close to saying what I can say on a single PowerPoint slide and still have enough room for Ken from Street Fighter. Think about how remarkable that is. Because pandemics and gain of function are the same kind of myth that perpetuate the same terrible working assumptions. And so you and your children are trapped in a national security theater. You need to get off social media as quick as you can. You are now in Camp 4, so it is from here that you can leave. You will have a good reason why you're leaving, and you will have a good understanding of what you are leaving behind, and therefore you won't feel empty. I'm really happy you were here. Thank you very much for joining me. This has been Gigaohm Biological. I hope that this has been a decent show. I'm going to pivot soon to making a more normal news program, and I'm also going to pivot really soon to doing a cartoon show on Saturdays. I've been promising it for a while, but I'm still working out the language here. I'm still working out how to put this in the book for the high school kids, and so these streams are very useful for me, and you will see a lot of these ideas and maybe even specific combinations of words in the book as I test them out. Live a lot of times helps me really iron things out, so thank you very much, all of you, for being here. I appreciate every one of you. Good to see you. This has been a production of the Independent Bright Web, trying to make America and the rest of the world great again by telling the truth, trying to get to the heart of things. Thank you very much. Thanks.
I think truth is good for kids. We're so busy lying, we don't even recognize the truth no more in society. We want everybody to feel good. That's not the way life is.